Good evening, TI radio listeners. We are going to discuss today an important document which has been submitted by Transnational Government of Eelam and with the help of the international lawyer Lorenzo. So we will be looking at the document which is Eelam Accession to the jurisdiction of International Criminal Court, a documented record which is produced by Transnational Government in October 2022. So we will be discussing this with Lorenzo, how this document and how the document is submitted to ICC and how the ICC is going to respond to this. Lorenzo will explain to us what it is for about the document, and we will be looking at the document and what it contains, and then what are the possibilities of ICC replying or ICC breaking this the case if we have to forward reality. So, you can say to us what it is exercise all about.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Manivan and Nana. So I will start by very briefly explaining who I am and what my background is, for those who don't know me. I was born in Canada to a Tamil mother and Italian Canadian father. I don't speak Tamil, but I am very passionate about the Tamil cause, which I have been ever since 2009. That was a life-changing moment for me. It was during that time that I decided to go to law school. I'm now completing my barrister training studies here in London, in the UK. I've also participated in human rights sections in Geneva. So that's a little bit of the background that I'm bringing to the table here. Now, speaking about the document itself, this grows out of a specific legal theory, which is now seen to be the mainstream theory in international law, which is that when a state is occupied, it does not lose its sovereignty, not even when it does not have a government. An occupied state is still a state in international law. This is first put forward by but it goes back a lot further than that. Back in the 1930s, there was a convention, a treaty for recognition. The state has the right to defend itself, to administer its courts of justice, to provide for its own prosperity, and all you need to be a state is you don't need recognition. You need a permanent population, territory, government, and the capacity to enter into relationships with other states. So one of the things that this document shows is that Tamil has all four of these components. It is more complicated than that, but that's the very simple basics. You have these four conditions in your state. You do not need recognition, and even when you are militarily occupied, you do not lose statehood, not even if there is no government representation. So Eelam is a state in law. This concept is different from a nation. It's a political term where you can say that a nation is the people and the state is the government. This is what people usually think about nations and states. In law, the people is the unit that has the right of self-determination. When they decide that they are a state, that is their decision. It is with their consent that the state is formed, and it is only with their consent that the state can be dissolved. So that's the background. Then walking through the document. We have the first page, which is the declaration.
I'll bring the documents up now. Yeah, you can continue to work.
All right. So we have the first page, which is the declaration of Eelam's accession to the jurisdiction of the International Criminal Court. This is the page that was signed by Rudrana, our Prime Minister. That would be page 3 in the document.
So can we go through this page, like what are the documents included?
Yes.
So the first three, yeah, it has got declaration of state of emergency and TGTE of International Criminal Court on the three, and the Jamaican as a de state ascending the ICC division directly on the floor. And yeah, can you explain to us about the de state?
Yes. So this is the Latin legal term for in law. We've heard the term de facto state. And actually, this is, again, a political term. In politics, when a state is not recognized, but it still exercises some degree of independence, it is often referred to as a de facto state. In law, this distinction doesn't make sense. Either you are a state or you are not. Either you have the four conditions that make you a state, or you're lacking one of those four conditions or more. So what we have shown is that we have those four conditions, and in law, de jure, Honolulu is a state.
Okay. And then it talks about the Cameroon state ascending division of country and the Cameroon ancient history and legal territory of its community. And then it talks about the flags of family sovereigns in Eelam. And on the 13, the family Eelam's reservation to sovereignty. And then on the 16, the restoration and reconstitution of Cameroon by exercise of TGTE. Can you please explain a little bit on that?
Yes. So I can begin, I guess, with the actual document of accession. The wording of this document is taken directly from other states that have acceded to the jurisdiction of the International Criminal Court, notably Ukraine. And there are a few others that have also done this. We looked at a few different models and we made sure that the wording was the same. One thing that we made sure to include is that we want the jurisdiction of the ICC to cover all four crimes that fall under the jurisdiction of the ICC. So these crimes, we know the first three very well: war crimes, crimes against humanity, and genocide. The fourth is aggression. Aggression is the crime of invading one state by another. And there's been some recent movement on that in the case law of the ICC, which had not been made when we wrote this document. However, we want to be clear that the state of Honolulu was invaded by Sri Lanka. It was a sovereign entity, a sovereign state that was invaded by Sri Lanka. This was not simply a civil war, it's far more complicated. Then I'll move on to the ancient, historic, and original legal title territory and state continuity. So these three terms, ancient title to territory, historic title, and original title, are three ways of talking about a territorial claim that goes back into ancient times. One of the key cases on this was when Singapore and Malaysia had a dispute at the ICJ over who owned a certain island. And they went back into the pre-colonial history of that island to show that before any colonizer took control of this particular island, whether that was the British or the Portuguese or whoever, in ancient times, this was owned by the Sultanate of Johor. And the Sultanate of Johor was succeeded by, if I remember correctly, by the government of Singapore. So there was this link between a modern day government and a pre-colonial government on the same territory. The ICJ recognized the modern day government's title to that territory based on the fact that there was continuity between the Sultanate of Johor and, if I'm remembering correctly, between the government of Singapore. So this is the same concept that we're talking about when we talk about reversion to sovereignty. Reversion to sovereignty is an argument that Sri Lanka used at the United Nations to say that it is not a new state. It was a state that was re-emerging from its colonial past. But what it left out when Sri Lanka made this argument at the United Nations was that there were three kingdoms on the island. Ceylon was not one single entity at that time. In the south, you had the kingdoms of Kandy and Kotte. In the north was the kingdom of Jaktapatan, which had taken over from the Chola Empire even before that. So when Ceylon made this argument, they made it incorrect. They created a historical fiction saying that the entire island was one kingdom, when in fact the Tamil kingdom before colonization was its own independent entity. The borders of that Tamil kingdom are the borders of Tamil today. And we see that both in the maps as well as in historical records that's provided in the Pakistan regiment. So that brings us then to restoration and reconstitution of Tamil by the exercise of the right of self-determination. One of the key things for us in this document is that the right of self-determination does not solely decide that Tamil is an independent state. Even without the right of self-determination, we still have legal arguments that show Tamil is its own sovereign state. However, that sovereignty was confirmed in the elections of 1977, when the Tamil United Liberation Front ran on a platform saying that a vote to the TULF is a vote for Tamil. The people of Tamil voted overwhelmingly to restore and reconstitute their ancient Tamil state. So at no time from first colonizer in 1619 through the British merger in 1833, through 1948 independence, through the Republican Constitution in 1972. In these hundreds of years of history, there was never any Tamil consent to any of this. So as I said at the beginning, consent decides when the state is formed and when it dissolves. There has never been Tamil consent to dissolve the state of Tamil at any time in the 400 years. Then we have the fact, the legal fact that the LTTE became the government of Tamil. And this is because the sovereign people consented to be ruled by the LTTE as its representative. In our wording, we use the wording authentic representative. And this is proved at the time of the Indo-Lanka Accord, when several armed groups were competing for this status. But all but one of the non-LTTE groups ultimately joined the Sri Lankan government. The fourth group joined the LTTE. And this left only two sides. So when the sovereign people said that we want communism, when they said that we want to be defended against Sri Lanka's military aggression against us, they backed the LTTE as the only force that could defend. That was the only force that was willing to defend. Moving forward then, international recognition of statehood and Tamil policies. The recognition that we're speaking of is that extended by Francis Kumaratunga in an interview to the Hindu. I believe the date was April 11, 2003, if I'm not mistaken. This is during the ceasefire period, where he said that the LTTE has established a de facto separate state in the north and east. Again, as I mentioned previously, this wording de facto state is not a legal, it's a political. But when we read Article 7 of the Montevideo Convention, it says that recognition may be express or passive. Express recognition is when you exchange diplomats. You say, I will set up an embassy in your country, you set up an embassy in mine, and we conduct our relationship that way. Tacit recognition is only when you have the intention of recognizing the state. And once you've recognized the state, Article 6 of the Montevideo Convention says you cannot withdraw recognition. Sri Lanka has recognized Tamil. It's a part of the historical record. Destruction of government and belligerent occupation did not destroy Tamil. That goes back to the concept I was speaking about at the beginning. This is under James Crawford's notion that when a government is destroyed or when a state is militarily occupied, this does not destroy the state. That's because the people are the sovereign of the state. Again, without consent, there is no destruction of the state. Tamil has never been destroyed. And we have then the maps to prove this. So Map 1 is taken from The Economist. That's done in grayscale. All right. All right. So the first map in the print version is done in grayscale. In the version that you have, it's in color. So this is the original version that's published in The Economist. No trouble at all.
We talked about so many other things before, so before the map. Yeah, this year, yeah.
There we go. So this map was published in The Economist during the ceasefire period. This shows very clearly the area claimed as Kamahoma, with the name Eelam. I put a caption just above that, a quote from another Economist article from about the same time. You can scroll to the top and you'll see it. It says very clearly, in the north, this is the border and runs to the facto state. Don't use force, justice system, and taxes. Again, you take that back to the Montevideo Convention, and de facto state just means state. Police force, justice system, and tax regime. This is the state making its decisions for itself, exactly as international law says that it can. I'm exactly to mention that the Montevideo Convention is considered, in legal terms, customary international law. What customary international law is that even if a state has not signed the treaty, it still applies worldwide. That's because this is the way that states conduct themselves when they're debating legal. So unlike the Rome Statute, which you have to sign in order to accept the ICC jurisdiction, the Montevideo Convention defines what a state is, does not need a signature to manifest. So go to the second map. So this is the map that was put out by the Sri Lankan Defense Force, and I put a caption over that, which quotes from the Hindu article that I just mentioned earlier, which says that Congress said that liberation has become the end to establish the de facto second state in the north and again, de facto state in law is meaningless. However, the wording that Congress of they use under Article 7 of the Montevideo Convention, which shows tacit recognition. Sri Lanka has recognized Eelam, and this map that was put out by the Sri Lankan Defense Force, Ministry of Defense, it shows that recognition.
So the yellow ones are controlled by the courts and claimed by Canada. That is including and then partially controlled by courts and the government of India and protection. So this map was published in 2005.
That's about it. Yes. The exact date isn't listed on my source, but I've included a footnote at the bottom.
The third map is a historical.
That's right. This is the British map from about the time that the British first took control of the island. You can see very clearly that the north and east are separate from the south, using virtually the exact same borders as what we saw previously as claimed at the time of home. I included here as the caption that was in the QLF manifesto, saying this is the territory of Kamloops, because And this history is shown visually in this map. So the document makes a lot the historical analysis that goes through and explains exactly why it is so that the pre-colonial state that belonged to Tamils is today the territory of Tamil. But the map shows this. It's very visually clear when you compare these two maps that we're talking about.
Okay, when we come into liberation, about the Tamil United Liberation Front formation of Tamil United Front, it was together in 1976 as part of the particular resolution.
So what you're looking at here is TGTE's own introduction. And after this introduction, then we have the Architecture Revolution, which we all know. We have the TULF Election Manifesto, which we all know. And these documents express the will of the Tamil people that took place during the general election. So the keywords were that a vote for the TULF is a vote for Tamil people. This means that the 1977 general elections were held as a referendum on Tamil. And know from historical records that the people of Tamil voted overwhelmingly because of the formula of the state. So this is a legally significant moment because it expresses the consent of the Tamil people to re-establish their own state, which after the Constitution arrived, after the 1972 Constitution cut the last tie with the colonial. The first move that the Tamil people made was to boycott this road Constitution, and the second move they made was to reform their own state. This is very legally significant in terms of what exactly is the election.
Resolution proclaimed in 14th of May 1976. To be supplying the audio, we'll put this in the air, loading this to the DP, so this document is also part of that. We will talk about the DP. The highlighted bit is that the first national convention of United Nations from Lead at Banaham, Patipata constituency, on the 14th of May 1976, hereby declared that Tamils of Ceylon, by virtue of their race, language, their religion, and their separate culture and heritage, the history of independent evidence as a separate state over distinct territory for several centuries, till they were conquered by the armed might of European invaders, and above all, they, by their will to exist as a separate entity, ruling themselves in their own territory, are a nation distinct and apart from Sinhalese, and this convention announced that to the world that the Republican Constitution of 1972 has made the Tamils a slave nation ruled by the new colonial masters, the Sinhalese, who are using the power they have wrongly transferred to deprive Tamil nation of its territory, language, citizenship, economic life, and of process of employment and education, thereby destroying all political, the convention now have got this political rights, all these rights have been provided from political, social, economic, and social representative. So I can explain there how the Rwandan government has violated those rights. According to this case.
Yes. So it is one of the quite valuable things for us that we have the record of Sri Lanka signing several agreements, which are clearly being broken here in history in the 1970s and are continuing to be broken today. These include the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, the International Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights, as well as the apartheid. Article 1 of both the ICCPR and the ICCSCR, Article 1 in both of them is the right of self-determination. But also equally important is the fact that the right of self-determination is expressed in a number of other different rights, such as the right to have a citizenship, which is taken away from the country, the right to participate in the economy, the right to work, which was taken away from common civil servants when they were excluded from participation in bureaucracy through the single-only act. The right to an education was denied to the common students in the 1970s through standardization. And what the effect of all of these things was to create exactly as we said, a slave nation, where the singular people who had advantages that the common people who did not have access to, and the separation between singular and common in this way upheld the racist regime. That is the crime of apartheid. So there's a number of violations of treaties that Sri Lanka is party to that are reported here in this system.
So it's also explained what the convention also further declares that the family and consider. And it declares that they say what it should do and who are the citizens, and all that is being recorded in the history.
That's exactly right. So when we see that
you want to go back to what the schedules and being done as a state or Convention further declares that the state of America consists of the people of northern and eastern provinces.
yes, my connection with
This one now.
that's right. Yes. My connection is a little unstable. I'm getting a message. Are you hearing me?
Yeah, I'm hearing.
All right, thank you. So yes, in subparagraph A there, where you see that the state of Tamil Eelam shall consist of the people of the northern and eastern provinces, full and equal rights to citizenship to all Tamil-speaking people living in the part of Ceylon, and Tamils of Eelam, Oregon living in many parts of the world. So we have three categories of Tamil Eelam citizenship. We have the Tamil people to whom the northern and eastern provinces of that day, which form the territory of Tamil Eelam belong. We have all Tamil-speaking people living in the part of Ceylon. This includes the upcountry Tamils. This includes Tamil-speaking Muslims, if we should choose to offer citizenship to Tamil Eelam. And then we have Tamils of Eelam, Oregon, living in any part of the world. That is the diaspora. So already in the 1970s, we have this definition of who belongs to Tamil Eelam based on consent. It's based on the free choice to belong to Tamil, and this is the definition that we voted on in a few elections.
The second one is not the council one, that is the constitution of Tamil shall be based on the principle of democratic decentralization so as to ensure the non-domination of any religious or territorial community of Tamil by any section. So this is very important to the Muslims, especially they fear that. So that is also their speech that it will be decentralized, but it works as a nation, but as a state, but it will have decentralization rather than the state itself says that it's not a state. Is it right?
That's exactly right. I mean, if we were to look even further into the document, we don't need to go into every detail, but this is only the tip of the iceberg with how religious as well as other types of groups within Tamil society would be protected. So the entire idea behind establishing Tamil as a state is that it would not have any religion as having a formal place. This is in the founding documents of Tamil.
Yeah, indeed, it says that Tamil shall be a secular state, giving equal protection and assistance to all religions to which people of state may belong to. So that is an essential, state, and it doesn't give any reference to religion, which is opposite to what 1972 Constitution thinks of religion, Buddha or Buddhism as the foremost religion in the land. So that is good. And also that he talks about all the discrimination on the sea. So he says that the state of Tamil caste shall be abolished, and the observance of religious practice, untouchability or inequality of any type based on the birth shall be totally eradicated, and observance in any form punished by death.
It's important to point out that one of the first acts of the LTT, when it formed the government of the state of Tamil, was to pass exactly such a law. The LTT outlawed caste discrimination, and this is something that is swept under the rug in many parts of that history.
And the Tamil language shall be the language of the state, but the right of Sinhalese speaking minorities, they also give Sinhalese people in Tamil to education, transmission of their business in their language, and shall be protected on the reciprocal basis of Tamil speaking minorities in the Sinhala state. Can you explain about this?
There was the proposal that Tamil would be the language of Tamil, but that this would not be a form of discrimination against Sinhalese people living in Tamil. This very clearly says that an independent Tamil Eelam will live in harmony with the Sinhalese people. This is a very, very clear indication of this. And the legal protections of the Sinhala language within Tamil will be protected, as it says, on a reciprocal basis with Tamil-speaking minorities in the Sinhala state, which means that those Tamils who are living on the Sri Lanka side of the border would be protected by the negotiating power of Tamil that it would have by granting rights to the Sinhala-speaking minorities.
The Tamil shall be a social state where it is exploitation of man by man shall be forbidden, permitting private enterprise in those branches within the limit prohibited prescribed by law. Economic development shall be based on the socialist planning, and there shall be a ceiling on the total wealth that any individual of the family may afford. So this is this document or this section is little bit questionable by Western or the democratic thinking that is it a sort of a Marxist sort of a principle or some sort of so will it have any effect on we have got similar concepts or is it right?
Well, this will take a little bit longer to explain, so please indulge me on this. But I think that this is basically the correct position to take. I think that today we use different words to express the same thing. But what we've seen is that in Southeast Asia in particular, those societies that have prospered, those societies that have done very well, are those societies where there is some sort of concept of equality between people, and specifically equality in terms of their economic rights. So there's a very good book by Joe Studwell called How Asia Works, which really influenced my thinking on this topic, where he shows that in the societies where there was lack of redistribution, after World War II, these societies went on to do very well in the decades that followed. Whereas the societies that kept land in the control of just a few very, very powerful individuals, these societies went on to become dysfunctional and corrupt societies. So while if we're speaking to a Western audience, we might want to downplay the word socialist. We might want to not talk so much about the history of that word. We would want the concept to apply in a sovereign and independent Commonwealth because these are the best ways to unleash human potential. When you have economic equality and also have private enterprise, which is also in paragraph F, when you have these two things together, that is a formula for success. Let's not forget that during the Cold War, the state of Eelam was emerging in 1977, and it was very important to keep a balance between the West and the East. I believe it's in the TULF election manifesto where it specifically states that Eelam will be non-aligned in the Cold War. So I believe that this is an important thing for us to keep in mind as we look at the future for ourselves as well.
That is a very powerful statement which they have made it in particular resolution even before somebody accused them of like these bunch of people who are doing some terrorist activities. So this is not what it is. They can't accuse TLF or anybody of doing anything that they are ready to build their nation at that time. And they have proved that our nation existed before the colonization, and then only in 1833 they have put all of them together. So with that thing, if there's any in 1833, I'm going to come to this document that until 1833, all the things have been maintained as separate as cities. So if they might have maintained separate as cities, then we will not have had this problem because if we had got their own territory maintain separately, like by Portuguese and Holland, they maintain it separately. Only 1833, the British Colebrook and Cameron Commission. So if there is any recourse to that in the parliament, because this British Parliament made this law of, because it's not some lord sitting down in Sri Lanka on a throne at the time during Major. It was the British Parliament which made the annexion possible, and they placed it on Britain, where there are four nations are now, three nations are joined together, like England, Scotland, and Wales, and Northern Ireland. Four nations, three nations are joined together. So then now they are divided. In other words, they gave the Parliament to Scotland, and they gave the Assembly to the Wales to maintain their thing, and even in the COVID process, they demonstrated that this was four nations, nations or whatever things are separate entities, as it is they manage their things separately, and there are laws which are down. So even though within the unity state of, if you consider the Britain as a unity state, but it's no longer a unity state. So, but they formed a unity state in Sri Lanka at that time in 1833, and the Parliament was also in. So if there is any recourse to this for any law courts in Britain to say that this is because of the 1833, we are in this plight today. So if the Britain should take more interest to be on our side, if there's any sort of recourse, or is it not possible?
This is a legally complicated question, but I will explain it the best way that I can. So the first part of the complication is that the answer is no. There's no recourse to the British Parliament now, because decolonization of the island has happened. The 1972 Constitution cut off the last ties between Britain and the island. And so, in Britain's eyes, it has washed its hands of the matter, and legally.
I think it was not with the consent. That is why 1972. It was not with the consent of Tamils. They used their democratic, or in other words, majoritarian power to do that. That's away from that. Yeah, and the Tamil never agreed, or they never supported, as you said earlier, they never supported the 1972 Constitution, and they have made it clear to the Commonwealth on the 1974 letter that they don't support any of those. So,
and this is exactly why the doctrine of reversion to sovereignty is so important. I will come back to that. I do want to add one little piece of why the answer is no before going into what the possibilities are under law. As I mentioned, yeah, the 1972 Constitution cuts that legal link between the island and the British Parliament. The British Parliament no longer has direct power to do anything on that. But there's another legal doctrine that also comes into play, which has a Latin name, uti possidetis. What this means is that when the country becomes independent, it is supposed to keep its colonial boundaries. This is a very, very strong argument for international law. When we had the Chagos Island decision that was against the United Kingdom, which said that the Chagos Islands belong to Mauritius, this was using that doctrine of uti possidetis. You cannot chop up a colonial land. And there is no recourse against it except, as you mentioned, consent. The right of self-determination is based on consent, and it lies higher in the legal hierarchy than this other doctrine of keeping the colonial boundaries. Self-determination can never be taken away in law. Uti possidetis can be taken away with the consent of the people. And we have exactly that consent in the bucket of the resolution. We have that exact consent in the TULF election manifesto. And we have the doctrine of reversion to sovereignty, which says that when the colonizer withdraws, the old kingdoms come back and the people decide what they want to do. So the people of the kingdoms of Kutcha and Kandy after 1972 decided that they were going to be remain Sri Lanka. The people of the Tamil kingdom in the north and east decided that they were going to form their own separate state of Tamil. that is what happened. But the British Parliament, you cannot have recourse to that. You do have the doctrine of self-determination and liberty of action.
So, but they can still support support the independence of Tamils in this by because they are under genocide, they can recognize genocide. We don't have to go into Sri Lanka to do that because Sri Lanka is, they never treated the people who left in their hands the same way. They want to take the whole island like they acting like the colonizers rather than acting like anybody else. They want so this is where we are. We have to make whatever is law. Is there a law may not be that. But on the other hand, we should emphasize the British parliamentarian that all these are the policies followed by those times, and then they should have a moral high ground or moral duty. There will be a moral thing to support the Tamil folks or Tamil questions.
I completely agree. I would like to bring up something that was often brought up maybe about a year ago when the invasion of Ukraine by Russia was happening. The ambassador of Kenya said that we in Africa, in our history, we did not like the boundaries the colonizers had drawn, but we accepted them in order to keep the peace amongst ourselves. Because if we had tried to change these borders, there would have been war. And this was quoted at Cummins saying, look, see, this is why you think that's where an independent state, because you think it's cause war. This is a false argument when it's applied to us. It's being kept inside the same state, deprived of all citizenship, social and economic rights. And as the Vakfadi Revolution has said, being turned into a slave nation. This is what caused the war. So in the advancement of peace, in the advancement of stability for the region, a separate Tamil state is going to be better as an outcome than preserving these colonial boundaries. And this is exactly why self-determination is higher in law than this other doctrine of keeping the colonial boundaries.
So we are putting the annex of Tamil United Nations from election manifesto in 1977. So that because it has got documentation of how the Tamil state and the laws like colonization. It talks about language. It talks about religion. It talks about culture. It talks about education. It talks about employment opportunities. It talks about economic development of family and racial studies and new constitution on family and constitution, everything different to the people. And that's the Tamil region has their own duties for family and following and the disciplines of family and the but one of the nation is how the family and will be formed. So the development of clearly states that. Then we are coming to the annex 3. So why did you include this annex 3 and
So the question would certainly arise if the ICC was going to take this application or this accession seriously. The question would certainly arise as to does TGTE have the right to submit this document? Because any person can claim to represent a state, but what is the legitimacy of that claim? This shows the history of why the TGTE was created after 2009, what its purpose was, that it was voted on by the diaspora as the government, and that therefore it has the authority to represent the Commonwealth at this time. So that was the point of this document.
So this says about the formation of PGT, how the formation document, which and also how the PGT is going and how it is taking and also it also comes in with who have done, because this had to be done in this accession document and it's done in a proper manner. So they are putting under the DGT's cabinet. So the document passed through the cabinet on the 26th of April 2022, and at that meeting he was there and then that he was present at that meeting and he took all the reason to send the document to the International Criminal Court to accept the jurisdiction of International Criminal Court on the piece of Cameroon. So this is what is stated in Tamil. It says that PGT's application to accede the jurisdiction of the ICC, the சர்வதேச குற்றவியல் நீதிமன்றத்தின் நியாய நித்தியத்தினை ஏற்றுக்கொள்வதில் அரசியல் அதற்கான விண்ணப்பத்தின் விவரங்களை விளக்கினார். இந்த சிறப்பு அமைச்சரவை கூட்டத்தின் அறிக்கையை சான்றி ஜெயக்குமார் வழிமொழிக்கு அமைச்சரவையால் ஏற்றுக்கொள்ளப்பட்டார். The Prime Minister explained the political advantage of acceding to the jurisdiction of International Criminal Court. The cabinet members expressed their point of view on the document that is to be submitted to ICC, which is a document that is already submitted to ICC. The cabinet unanimously accepted that assenting to the jurisdiction of the ICC is a good strategy. The minutes of the special cabinet meeting were accepted as accurate and proposed by Sandri Sivaraman and Secretary of Budget. This is that cabinet minutes, and then we come into formation document. Now we got the question. So accepting the jurisdiction of ICC, what are the advantages and what are the disadvantages? What are the advantages? Okay, we accept that because we are a separate nation. So what are the advantages of
the question of being a separate nation, I'll come to that second. The first and most immediate advantages are that we will be engaging with the accepted international legal machinery to bring Sri Lankan law to the next step. I mean, we have examples, for example, the state of Israel, where they did not go to international correction. They declared their own state. They then went around the world with their intelligence service, kidnapped Nazis, and tried them in Hungary in the state of Israel. This is a controversial strategy. Nobody's advocating that for some reason. What we're saying is that we want to follow the established due process of international legality this the right way to show that we are the people on the island who are upholding the international standards of legal process. And in the process, by doing this, we'll also have a certain personal sense of justice that those who have killed our relatives, those who have driven us from our homeland, are being tried and sentenced in accordance with the norms of law. So then the second part is whether the ICC would accept us our jurisdiction. Excuse me, accept Tamil accession to its jurisdiction. I don't feel very optimistic about this at the moment. I think that is something that will take a very long time. However, we do have precedent of an unrecognized state that was then recognized, and because of that recognition, ICC gained jurisdiction of this territory. That's Palestine. There's problems with Palestine. You know that the Palestinian leadership has had close ties with Rajapaksa time. This isn't to say that everything that Palestine does is a model for Tamil by any means, but in this particular case, they found a way through, and this was by gaining recognition at the UN General Assembly. Through that recognition, the ICC gained jurisdiction of its territory.
So, there's a question that, okay, there are in the international reports, now they are saying this has been always said that not only the Sri Lanka has committed crimes, the LGT also committed. So by bringing that into the territory of Tamil, just into the territory of Tamil, will there be any issues regarding Tamil combatants and Tamil, especially the LGT accusations? So will they be also come into the prosecution if that happens?
So I want to begin by saying that the accusations against the LGT must be proven in a court of law. Until then, these are only accusations. And in order to have that happen, justice needs to be established in some sort of forum, whether that be an ad hoc tribunal, whether that be a hybrid tribunal, whether that be the ICC. We haven't gotten to that point. And the reason for that is in the quote that Gotabaya Rajapaksa gave to Stephen Rapp, which we heard about 2 years ago or so, where Stephen Rapp, ambassador of the US, they asked Gotabaya, why didn't you try to lead it? Why did you kill him? And Gotabaya answered, well, trials may go on for so long and people get off. I killed them, I killed them, I killed them. So when we break this down, what Gotabaya is actually saying, trials go on for so long. That is due process. That is what you need to determine whether someone is guilty or innocent. That takes time. This is exactly what I meant earlier when I said that Eelam wants to follow due judicial process. We don't want sham trials and then executions to make everyone feel good. What we want is to follow procedure. Gotabaya didn't want that to be out. Then he said, when people get off. This means he knows that most of the accusations leveled against the LGBT are false. It's a simple fact that the accusations that have been leveled against the LGBT are largely exaggerations and fabrications. Gotabaya himself knows that, and he's afraid that this will be proven in court. And then finally, we have the fact that Sri Lanka was given the option by the international community to set up its hybrid tribunal. Partly Sri Lankan judges, partly international judges. Sri Lanka to this day has refused to do this, even though the international community was against the LGBT. Even though the international community would have accepted a hybrid court that only tried LGBT members with maybe 1 or 2 sacrificial lambs from the Sri Lankan armed forces. It could have been done, and Sri Lanka chose not to do it because they knew that this would backfire against them. Law is not on Sri Lanka's side. Law is on ours.
Oh, that's good. And how are you going to proceed? What are the, how you are going to proceed with this, because you are already practical activity. So how we are going to forward, so we are going to encourage ICC to take this matter seriously, and how we are going to, how what the climate can contribute, or what others can contribute to move this process forward.
So we have a number of lobbyists who go to the UN Human Rights Council every year. That's in Geneva. They're in contact with diplomats from around the world, and this can now be used in our lobby. But we are willing to submit to the jurisdiction of the International Criminal Court in order to have some sense of justice as to what has been done to us. And these diplomats are human beings just like the rest of us. They have a sense of justice, but they also have a sense of duty to the country's interests. We have the sense of duty to our own country's interests, the country Cameroon. They have the sense of duty to each of their countries. But in our conversations with these diplomats, it needs to be shown that we have tried the route of human rights. We have tried the route of democratic growth. We have tried the route even of unstructured. We have tried the route of appealing to the international community's sense of humanity. None of that has worked. And Sri Lanka still has not been held accountable. Sri Lanka still refuses to sign their own statute, even though it has been asked. It still hasn't set up a hybrid tribunal, even though it's been asked. And so this is our way of showing our good faith to the international community that all we want is justice.
Thank you very much for the long conversation. And also few words on self-determination. How to do one of the ways, but there are other ways you can find self-determination as well. So you can tell us a little bit of that side of things, and then we can.
So it has been a demand of the Tamil people to have a referendum on self-determination since 2009. When I first came into this movement, I was 30 years old in 2011, and I was told genocide recognition and self-determination through referendum. That's what we stand for. I don't think that has changed. But in order to have a referendum, what we've seen in recent history as well as more ancient history, going back to the 1800s, is that countries only get their independence when it's in the interest of other countries that will become independent. When you try and do it alone, you may have some certain amount of success, but eventually the international community is stronger than you. So it's very important to establish common interests between ourselves and the countries that have the power to give a thumbs up and thumbs down. I don't only mean the powerful. I don't only mean the very key players in the international system, but also smaller countries who have votes at the UN. Because when we call for a referendum as people, we can keep calling for it without anything happening. We've already had the vote of 1977. At that time, we were not on the international community's radar. At that time, this was a question between us and Sri Lanka. Today, this is an international matter. There are international stakeholders. There are players now that are not even countries. They're investment firms and private equity funds that have an interest in what happens on the island. If we can show that we can give a better deal by being a separate country, one that would be prosperous and peaceful, we will get our country. And one way to ratify that, one way to put the stamp of approval on that, democratic processes, is a referendum. But the groundwork needs to be put in place before that. It doesn't require a referendum. but what it does require is cooperation with key members.
Thank you very much. I think we will proceed further and hope this document will also as you said earlier, lobby and others how legally and maybe forward. And these are all one of the avenues of moving the justice in the context. So I hope that we will continue to do that and best of luck with all the other projects you are doing and we soon get the final that. Thank you very much for taking part in this.
It was a pleasure to have this discussion, and thank you for inviting me. I look forward to it.
Thank you.